Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury beauty as well as brushes. And today we're going to be going over some brushes that I've recently picked up. And let's start off with the Koyudo Lunar New Year brush for Year of the Tiger. So this is called the Kokuzo brush, and it retails for 135 US dollars. It is available at Beautylish and Fude Beauty. And you can see it is undyed goat hair. It's Psycho goat hair. It is soft. This has 45 millimeter bristle length, and the total length is 135 millimeters. So you've got, this is a handmade Fude brush. You've got the lacquer detail here with the tiger, and the tiger, you know, it represents like courageousness and so forth. And that's what they were trying to evoke with this particular brush. So you've got the Koyudo name here. You can see there's a pinched ferrule, and it has more of an oval shape. And that's going to give you more of this like paintbrush style brush. So flexibility for the brush. You can see that it's soft, it's flexible. You can use this for powder, blush, or bronzer. I have used this in a few different videos, so you've probably seen it already in action, but I personally like to use this for blush and for powder, specifically if I'm using it for powder, like more in strategic areas, if I'm not putting it all over my face. So if I'm like focusing here or like, you know, the T-zone or something, then I like to use a brush with this style. And I really like using this to sweep on blush as well. So I think this goes on nicely with the like a firmer, deeper blush that you're trying not to get too much pigment on. That works well for me with this shape. Loose powder blushes or even softer powder blushes where a lot of pigment comes up, but you don't have to be quite as cautious about, you know, how much pressure you apply. If I am working with a softer powder blush and I want to use this brush to apply it, you know, you can always just make sure you knock off anything excess before going on, but it really gives you this nice soft wash of color. You just want to make sure it's a blush that, you know, the size of the brush works, if that makes sense. Sorry, I have an eyebrow swatch on my hand from the demo. So let's go ahead and look at a few comparisons of this Kokuzo brush. So first I wanted to compare it to last year's brush, which we had the Year of the Oxen. Mine just kinked a little from drying here, but that's not how the brush comes. So ignore those hairs that are sticking out right there. But last year's brush, we had squirrel hair, and you can see it was cut on an angle, very, very soft. Look at the flexibility here going this way versus this way compared to this year's. So they are different brushes. The size is about the same. You can see it's about the same as the longest point here for last year's brush. And between the two of these, I have to say I actually prefer last year's brush. You know, I think you're getting a better deal getting the squirrel hair versus, because they're both $135. So undyed goat hair, you know, it's a great brush. I love undyed goat hair. It's probably my favorite to use because it's so versatile. But price-wise, I feel like this one's a better deal for what you're getting. Plus, I think this shape, the angled shape isn't itself unique, but this brush itself is in the fact that I don't really have anything else that is exactly the same in, you know, the way the bristles flow, the amount of like kickback and everything that you've got on here. So the density, the shape, and the size. And this makes it really, really great for bronzer and blush. I don't really use it for powder, but I would have to say between the two of these, I prefer last year's. It does still come and go in and out of stock. So definitely something, if you're trying to decide which one might be better, I personally prefer last year's. Now, some other brush shapes that I find similar. This is the Giorgio Armani blush brush. It's a mix of undyed goat hair and synthetic bristles. You can get this during their timeless sales for a really good price, you know. I think, you know, like 40% off. So don't pay full price for this if you're interested in it. but you can see that the shape of the brushes is pretty similar. The Armani is going to be thinner here, and you can see the bristles are slightly longer in the Armani as well. This one's a little bit floppier. This one I primarily use for loose powder. I can use it for blush, but honestly, I just pretty much use it for powder. But you can see that these are going to be similar. The Koyudo is going to be more dense, thicker overall as well. This here's the Refer 22. These are not very similar brushes, but I know a lot of you have this, so I wanted to be able to show you the difference. And you can see, you know, the shape is different. This is more domed, whereas you can see this one, the Koyudo angles a little bit more, so you have a ridge here at the top, which makes it more versatile. If you really want, you can apply highlighter. Just don't expect it to be super precise. And you can see the density here of the 22. This is going to be a lot more dense, and it's going to be better for a little bit more of like a buffing action. A lot of people use this for bronzer. For me, it's too big. I prefer something smaller, but just wanted to show you the size comparisons on that. Another one that is a similar shape here. This is the F01 brush from Chikuhodo. And you can see shape-wise that we have a similar bristle length here. And this is going to be an oval ferrule, but you can see it's not really pinched in so much like the Koyudo. So this is going to be a little bit, I mean, this is fox hair, so the bristle movement is going to be a little different. This one actually feels more dense, and it probably is slightly more dense overall. You can see it's also going to be a little bit thicker here as well. So shape-wise is a little different because again, this is going to be more domed versus more of an angle here. We also have the Chikuhodo KZ02, which is one of my favorite brushes. You can see, again, we've got a similar shape. It's not as angled. This is going to be actually more similar here to the F01 with the ferrule. So it's a wide oval, not really so pinched. But again, you've got a similar bristle length here as well. And you can see that this, how it's pinched, it flattens this area a bit more. So you get a slightly different action compared to this one here, which is a little bit more rounded. This is another brush we're going to be talking about. This is the Byredo 31 brush. It's their face brush. And obviously these are very different in size and everything, but I did want to show you that the actual general shape of these is pretty similar. It's a little bit more rounded in the Byredo, but they both have kind of a ridge at the top and they angle pretty similarly. This is vegan, so it's 100% synthetic bristles compared to the undyed goat hair here. Now, undyed goat hair, again, can be used with liquids, creams, or powders. Because of the flexibility and the length of these bristles, I personally find it much easier to use with a powder product over a cream product because with cream products, you typically want to have a little bit more of a stiffer, denser brush to kind of buff those in. So just some notes about the Kokuzo brush. Overall, I am happy I picked this one up. I'm really loving it. That brings me up to the Beautylish Lunar New Year brush. I did not pick up this past year's, or this current year's, the Year of the Tiger one. I was going to pick it up, and I like the artist. This is the Year of the Rat one, which looks like a little mouse. I also have the Oxen. They're the same brush though every year with just a different design. So I decided not to pick it up because I don't need more of the same brush, but I wanted to show you how these two compare. So this is 125 US dollars. It is squirrel hair versus the undyed goat. You can see the handle length is going to be different. You've got a longer handle in the Beautylish brush. This one here was still a Beautylish and Chikuhodo collab. Now Beautylish does not say who it is that they are working with. Rumors have varied between Chikuhodo and Hakuhodo. It could be somebody else completely. I really don't know. So, but I wanted to show you the difference in the shape and the size. This is going to be more of a traditional shape powder brush. It's more domed. You have a wide oval ferrule here. And again, this one's 125 US dollars. This year, Beautylish brought back all of the previous years So far there's been Pig, which I passed on, Rat and Oxen, which I both have, and then this year's is a Tiger. And again, it's gonna be the same brush. You've got this gorgeous lacquered handle as well, and yeah, squirrel hair for this. So these are the 2 Lunar New Year brushes. I just wanted to note that the Koyudo brushes do come in this box here. So you've got the cute little tiger that matches the handle, and it has a little like information about Kumano, Fude, and so forth in here. So the Beautylish one, I believe, does not come in a box. Mine did not. So if that's changed for this year, I'm unaware of it. Then I also wanted to talk about the latest release from Sonia G. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because it was limited edition. They are gone right now. There has been talk of potentially bringing these back, but not necessarily with the same handles. So this was a Sonia G Yakusugi set. And this is a box that they came in. You can see it's beautiful. You've got a little bit of like a clear, not a gloss, but there's a little bit of a clear like varnish on here. So you can keep this, you know, I just think this is the most beautiful box. So this is what the brushes come in, and it came with a little like plum wrapper as well, which I don't have here. And the brushes were nestled in here. Now, this is a limited edition set. I think it's a gorgeous set, and I did pick one up because I don't have any Saibikoho brush hair, and I apologize if I said that incorrectly. I just have a hard time with the pronunciation of that word. But this brush set came with 2 brushes. So the wood on these is actually made from Yakusugi. Now, these are 1,000-year-old cedar trees in Japan on the island of Yakushima. And that's where they came from. These trees, you can only use the wood once they have naturally fallen. So you may not, you know, cut down a tree and harvest it for lumber. So the wood on these all have a special grain. You know, they might have some like natural differentiation and so forth, but it's very special wood. It's very prized, and it does have a cedar smell. Now, these handles in particular, you don't really smell it very much because there is lacquer on top of like a varnish on top of the handles to keep them, you know, keep them nice and smooth and, you know, pristine. So you don't really get much of that cedar smell. But these are recommended to be kept separately from your other brushes to kind of keep them safe and protected. These are also not meant to travel with because they are more delicate, and these handles are, this wood is very prized, and it's like a sacred wood in Japan. So I was really curious about this set because I don't have any brushes like this. Brushes that do come like this, they're typically out of my price point. So I have not invested in them, and I probably won't because they're just a little bit outside of my price point since I'm not like a true Fude brush collector. And then we've got one eye brush. This has blue squirrel. You can see that, you know, it's pointed. Okay. It's almost like a thickened lip brush in shape, slash like the pencil one. The pencil one's more rounded, but you can see that it's kind of a similar shape to that. And I like this mostly for like the lower lash line inner corner. And I have used this in some videos, so you've probably seen me use this before. And then this is the cheek brush, which has Saibikoho hair, which if you're familiar with goat hair, okay, so this is undyed, but goat hair comes in different quality levels based on their fineness, the amount of kinks and everything in there, and so forth. Saibikoho is your highest grade of the goat hair, or maybe it's, I think it's the highest grade. I might be wrong on that. There might be one that's even higher than that, you know, like ancient goat hair and so forth. The Saibikoho hair in the ancient goat hair lines is supposed to be even softer. So, you know, I'm not sure how they differentiate that or how they distinguish that level wise, but this is essentially your top quality level of undyed goat hair. It's incredibly soft and it's finer. Like you can see like the cuticles on here, there are like fewer kinks. It's going to be smoother. It feels more like squirrel hair, but it's goat, and it's not supposed to pick up product quite as well as some like the Psycho, which is what Sonia G's brushes are mostly made out of. So I have used this again in some videos. I don't have a demo of that here today, but it has been in several of my videos. I actually find it picks up the product really well and deposits it really well. I was surprised the first time I went in to use it. I picked up too much thinking that it wasn't going to go on as well, and I had clown cheeks. But I think it's a very nice soft brush, and you can see that it's actually fairly dense. And I think that's one of the things that really helps with the product placement on here. And you can see that the shape here is a little angular all around, and you've got this round ferrule here. So I don't want to harp on this too much because it is unavailable right now, and if it does come back, it's not going to come back in exactly the same form that it is now. But I am very happy to have tried this. I think Cyber hair is very soft. I like it. It's not one that is going to become something that I buy a ton of, because I do find that the Psycho hair, which is in Sonia G's brushes normally, is, you know, it's a little bit more functional, a little more versatile, because you do want to take a little bit, you want to treat this one a little bit more delicately. And so it won't be like an everyday kind of brush. This is a special brush for me. And last up, I wanted to talk about the new Byredo brushes. Currently, these are only available at Selfridges, but they should be coming to the Byredo store, I would think, pretty soon, because Byredo has just started kind of promoting them on Instagram. I don't see them on their website quite yet, but probably soon. Now, these are 100% vegan synthetic bristles, and I typically prefer natural hair brushes, so I wasn't really sure if I was going to like these, and the prices on these are not that inexpensive. For a synthetic brush, you know, I think this one's like $51 at Selfridges, you know, so they're not cheap. They're not like the highest price. They're not like Westman Atelier vegan brush prices, but you know, they're not inexpensive for a synthetic brush. I wasn't really sure how much I would like these or how they compare to other synthetic brushes I have, but I have to say I was incredibly impressed by this brush set. You have to buy these individually, by the way. They don't come as an actual set. These are the only 5 that I have seen so far. This one here is the face brush. This is 31, and I do have a demo. I did all of my makeup today with these 5 brushes, so I will show you that after we discuss these. But the 31 brush, you can see that you've got this nice shape here. Look at the flexibility on here. There's density and firmness to all of these brushes. So depending on what you are trying to do with your makeup, that may or may not be a good thing. But if you're familiar with Byredo products, specifically their eyeshadows, you'll know that they have more of like this putty, like creamy, like formula that really goes on best with a finger. And that's how you get the most pigmentation. It goes on very smoothly. You get this really gorgeous finish. And sometimes when you use a brush, it's just, it's different, you know? So if you're familiar with this, this requires a little bit more. If you're using like a regular brush, you usually require a little bit more pressure, or, you know, going over an area a little bit more to get as much pigment as you would from your finger. And I think that's where these brushes really shine. They are definitely ideal for the Byredo products. And I have used them with other eyeshadow products and everything as well. They work just fine with them. But Byredo shadows, I feel like, are a little different. The formula is a little different. Other brushes work fine with them, but not great. These brushes work great with them. They work just as well as your finger, which for me, I don't really like using my fingers for my eye makeup usually, you know, partly for the fact of having to wash my hands and so forth, but also my fingers are a little bit bigger, so getting it into the inner corner and things like that is a little bit harder. These brushes make it so easy, and the effect you get is the same as if you had done all of your makeup with your fingers from Byredo. So I have to say I'm really impressed with these. Let's cut to the demo. We'll come back and we'll do a few comparisons. So right now I have on the Visaire Eye Primer, the Dior Forever Skin Veil Primer, and the Sisleya Le Tint Foundation. I have shade 0R Vanilla. And we're going to use the Byredo cheek brush, and we're going into the Koyudo. This is the blurring powder in, they now have a name. I bought it before it had a name. I think it's blurring beige now. And just going to get a little powder up on the brush here and lightly dust this. So I wanted to show you the brush movement. So you can see that although it looks kind of like a floppy brush, there is a little bit of resistance. It picks up the product really well. And you can see that it's not, you know, there's definitely movement with the bristles, but it's not as loose and floppy as I actually expected it to be. So this is the powder brush, which is also the blush and bronzer brush. So let's go ahead and move into bronzer and blush. For bronzer, we're going to take the Gucci powder bronzer in shade 1. And I just got a little bit right on the tip, and I just knocked a little bit off on my cloth. Just going to go right back here so you can kind of see this. So here it is. You can definitely like build this up, make it more intense. I don't wear a ton of bronzer, so I like to go in lightly. But here is the actual bronzer on this side. Let's just add a little bit more to this side. Just go ahead and go around. And for blush, let's take the Pat McGrath in Electric Bloom. I'm choosing this because it is so bright. And if I go in with this normally, I will get a really, really dark swatch of color. So we're gonna see how softly we can do. This is just barely touching the brush to the blush. And I just dab some off on the cloth. And we're gonna go very, very softly here. And you can see right away how much pigment comes off this brush. So, I mean, that's barely touching my skin. I don't even think I need to re-dip. Let's go straight into this side here, and I can press a little bit more firmly on the skin now because I have removed some of that pigment, but you can see how easily the pigment comes off. So now I am rubbing the rest of the pigment onto my cloth, and I'm going to just take this and I'm going to kind of buff this into the skin a little bit. So is this the best buffing brush? No, it's not. However, it does do, you know, it buffs a bit. You can see how much more that's spread out, and can go ahead and add some powder or something to dilute it if I want. But you can see that that does help with some buffing action. Now for highlight, we're gonna go into the Chantecaille highlighter from the holiday. I'm gonna use this brush too, but I'm just gonna go right here on the tip. So just right there, and just put a little bit of this on here. So you can see that this brush is a bit rounded. So there is a little bit of a ridge at the top. Now, this product didn't come up quite as easily on the brush. So I'm just gonna get a little bit more, and there you go. Just a little bit of a kiss of highlight. And let's get some on this side. There you go. So I'm going to wipe this off. So most of the highlight's gone, and just gonna kind of buff a little bit here on the cheeks. Just kind of blending a little bit of that highlighter into the first part of the blush there. All right, so that's a face brush. This is the only face brush that is in this set. And then we have 4 eye brushes. This one here can be used for brows or liner. And then you can see that these 2 here are both more of the dome shape, like smudging brushes. And I find that these work beautifully with the Byredo eyeshadows. And then this one's a little bit fluffier, but yet it's still not that floppy. So it's good for these eyeshadows to, you know, kind of diffuse something in the crease or get a lighter application. And you can see that there's movement, but not a whole lot. And the smudgers there's really not that much movement either. So let's go ahead. We're going to use the Byredo Disco palette today. This is one of my favorites, and we're going to start off with this one here, which is the number 2 brush. And I'm just going to go ahead and go into this second shade here. Just going to get a little product on here, knock off any excess. And I have the Vizier eye primer on. So I'm turning this so that it is horizontal. And I'm just going to start putting this in the crease. You can see how well it deposits these Byredo shadows. So just wiping the brush off, and I'm taking it now vertically and just going to kind of blend this upper portion a little bit, diffuse that a little. You can see that I like to keep it a little bit darker on the outer portion compared to the inner portion. I'm going to take the bigger smudger brush. This is the number 1. I'm going to go into this last shade here, and it's like a really stunning kind of like a burgundy eggplant cocoa mix. And I'm just going to dab this here on the outer corner here. Okay, and now I'm just taking a little bit of what's left on the brush into the actual crease just to deepen that area a little bit. So I could actually stay with this brush for like the whole eye look if I wanted to. It's that versatile. But we're going to go ahead and move on. So I'm actually going to go into just a little bit of this 4th shade here. And I'm just going to put this right here in the center, adjacent to that. And then we're going to move into the smaller version of this. This is the 03 brush. I'm going to go into this lighter shade here and gonna work our way from the inner portion over. So this brush in particular works really well on the lower lash line and everything as well. If you want like a smudgier look, it also works really well in the inner corner. It's a little bit small to do the whole lid. Like this portion of the lid that I'm using right now, I think normally I'll probably use the larger brush, but I just wanted to show you how this one performs. Now, let me just show you the larger one with this product here. So if I use a larger one, I want to avoid the very inner corner because it'll just make it too messy. But you can see how quickly that works to kind of get the rest of the lid there. Just kind of blending that a bit with the other shades. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take the first brush that we used, which is the number 2. I'm wiping it on my cloth to make sure there is no additional shadow on there. And I'm just going to go in and clean up this crease a little bit. And you can see that some of the lighter champagne shade, I'm bringing that up a little bit to get a little bit more of an ombre effect in that area. Now, as I mentioned, you can use the 03 brush on the lower lash line. Let's go ahead and add just a touch of that. We're going to add a little bit of this 4th shade here to the outer portion here. You can see how nicely it fits there, and it's so soft under the eye. And then I'm just going to go into this gold shade and do the rest of the lower lash line here. Now for the 11 brush, our liner brush, again, you can use this for a brow product. I actually used the Byredo brow stick that recently came out. I used the shade Sand, and this is one, you've got this more like pyramidal triangular shape here. And then on this side, you have the spoolie. So let me just show you what this one looks like. So I think if I were to buy this again, I would purchase a deeper shade for myself. This is Sand, and it is refillable, and it comes with a refill when you purchase it. So definitely something great. So we're going to take the 11 for upper lash line. I'm going to go into the last shade here and just picking up some product, knocking anything extra onto my cloth, and just going to lightly go over the lash line up here. All right, so that's it for the eye look up close. I'm gonna curl my lashes, add some mascara, and add some lipstick, and that's gonna be it for this makeup look. So this is the final makeup look from a distance. For mascara, I have on the Sisley So Stretch in brown, and I added the Byredo lipsticks in Damson Jam, which, you know, this shimmery nudes collection is one of my favorites, and I really love this formula. And then I lightly dabbed Feverish on top, which is the sparkly, like peachy or pink one. And I really like the effect. So this is the final look. All right, so I hope that was helpful so you can see how well these brushes perform. Let's start off with comparisons of the 31 brush. So by the way, the Byredo, you can see you've got more of this like barrel style handle. It goes straight down, and you know, you've got the chrome look with, I believe it's aluminum. And this here is a rougher undyed Go hair brush. This is the number 5 brush. This is the closest one in shape to it. You can see that the rougher is going to be a little bit longer. Handle-wise, it's also longer. And let's look at how the hairs bend. So look at this compared to this. So you can see the synthetic fibers have more of a kickback. So when it bends, it bounces back very quickly compared to the goat, which also bounces back quickly, but just not as quickly as the Byredo. So this gives it the feeling of more density, even when there isn't necessarily more density, if that makes sense. So it's going to also provide a little bit more of a buffing action as well. Now, this is a pretty dense brush itself. You can see shape-wise that they are similar, but the rougher is going to be bigger overall, and it's fluffier. Now, other ones, this is Sonia G cheek brush from the Lotus set, which is the same as, there's a dyed version, I think it's the Cheek Pro, that's the same shape as this, but you can see that the Sonia G is going to be smaller. They do have a very similar shape though of the way the bristles are arranged here. So you can see that this one, how this moves compared to the Byredo. Again, these are just going to stay a little bit, there's just a stronger kickback to the undyed Go hair. And then I have a couple synthetic brushes. This obviously is much bigger. This is the Esom V49. The Esom V series is my favorite set of synthetic brushes. I really like these brushes, but you can see here how fluffy and soft this one is in comparison. So very, very fluffy. This one is the V50, which is angled, but you can see this one has a little bit more density, and you know, it feels a little bit more dense, but just look at the bristle movement on these brushes compared to the Byredo. The synthetic brushes themselves don't necessarily mean that there's more kickback. This definitely, the Byredo definitely has a stronger one. This is the Katie Jane Hughes and Spectrum Collection 02 brush. And this is the closest one in her set that, you know, is the most similar, but you can see that it doesn't have, it's more of a gradual gradation going up to the top, and it's a little bit more flatter top. But look at this in comparison. You can see that this is fluffy. It's loose and airy compared to the Byredo. And I think that's what makes these brushes different. It makes them stand out from the other synthetic brushes that I've experienced. Let's take a look at some of the eye brushes. So this is the Byredo 02, and I wanted to start with this one because it's different from the other shapes. So this one here, it's almost like a flat shader slash crease brush, right? The closest is the Katie Jane Hughes 11. You can see it's pretty much the same shape and pretty similar in size. But again, just like with the cheek brush, you can see the bendability on here, the density and so forth. This is going to be a softer, fluffier brush versus this, which again, there's some fluffiness with it, but you can feel that these are like a stiffer fiber than the Katie Jane Hughes. These feel airier and wispier. This also is more dense. I believe there are actually more fibers in here compared to the Kitty Jane hues. You can see that the ferrule here is just ever so slightly thicker than the Kitty Jane hues one. Now, just some comparisons of some other crease brushes. This is the Sonia G Classic Crease. You can see this one has a round ferrule, but aside from the fact that this one is pinched, they do have a very similar shape in size arrangement. So again, Byredo, Sonia G. This is a crease 2 from Sonia G. Again, it's a similar shape. This one's longer, and again, it also has the round ferrule like the other one. This one's undyed goat hair. You can see this one's gonna be a little bit stiffer than the classic crease. Still not quite the same feeling of density that you get from the Byredo. And last up for this brush, we have the Isom V34, which has a different shape, but you can see this one is definitely airy and light. So again, this one has a round ferrule. It's much longer. Those longer bristles will give it a little bit of a looser feel as well, but just for comparison there. And next up, I wanted to look at these brushes together because they're essentially the same, just different sizes. So the bigger one here is the 01 and the smaller one is the 03. You can see shape-wise, they're pretty similar. This one, the 03, is a little bit more angled going up versus the 01. So this will, partly because of the size, you can see it's going to have like a flatter top. And, you know, the closest one I have is the Refer 12, which you can see is a little bit shorter, but size-wise is going to be similar to the one with the actual like diameter and so forth. So it's a little bit shorter. The shape of the bristles and everything are going to be pretty similar. Here's the Byredo. You can see you've got some flexibility and movement. And here's the Refer. So again, they feel a little similar with the density and the movement, but it's really all in how the bristles spring back. The Byredo just spring back a little bit faster, which makes it feel like it's not moving quite as much, if that makes sense. So that's the Refer 12. Another one here, this is the Kitty Jane Hues number 13. This one's kind of in between these two sizes. So you can see it's kind of like a medium size, but again, it's less dense and it's much airier in general. So here's this one here. You can see how much bendability you have. It feels a lot airier on the lid as well. And again, it's just a difference in the fibers that were used. Other comparisons, this is the Sonia G Pencil Pro. So that's going to be closest to the 03, but you can see it's going to be bigger than the 3. Shape-wise is pretty similar to the 3. They both angle a little bit more so than the 01, but the Pencil Pro is just going to be a little bit bigger. This is the Sonia G Pencil 2, which again is going to have a similar shape. It's a little bit bigger than the Pencil Pro. Again, our angling is more similar to that of the 03 than the 01, which is just a little more flat, but it's kind of more of a medium size here. And last up, we have the Refer 26, which is going to have a little bit more movement. It's also more angled. You can see that the hairs start to increase in length right about here. So it goes up here versus here on this. So it's going to be a little bit of a different shape here. Just to show you the movement, we've got the Refer 26 here. This one is the Pencil 2, which you can see doesn't really move that much. There's not quite as much movement with that. And here's the Pencil Pro, which has even less movement. And just to reiterate, we've got the 03. Again, that's going to be pretty similar to the Pencil Pro. And the 01, which is going to have more movement because, again, it's a little bit bigger. So overall thoughts on these brushes. Again, the Koyudo, very happy with it. I like it. I'm glad I have it, but it's not one that I would consider backup worthy for my collection. It's not a unique shape. If you aren't in love with the handle, I wouldn't necessarily say you need to rush out and get that. If you're trying to decide between this year's and last year's, I personally think last year's Koyudo Lunar New Year brush was better. The Beautylish Lunar brushes, I think they are great value. I just don't think you need to collect all of them unless you are a collector. So if you're looking for brushes that you're using on a regular basis, pick the ones with the handles that you like the best in that case, which is why I passed on this year's Tiger. I just don't need more of the same, but I think it's a great value and a really great brush. So if you're in love with the Tiger handle, definitely pick it up. You know, I'm waiting to see what else comes out in future years since, you know, I don't need 12 of the same brush, so I don't want to pick up all of them. As for the Sonia G Yakusugi set, I think it is a great set. I thought it was actually very well priced, and it was a great introduction to some of these more rare special brush hairs and woods and so forth. I'm very glad I got that. And again, it may restock in the future, just not in the exact same version that it's in now. So I really happy I got it, but again, not going to focus on that. And then these Koyudo brushes, Byredo brushes. I didn't do any comparisons here of this last brush, which is the number 11, because honestly, it's kind of like a standard angled liner brush. Doesn't perform any differently than any others that you may have. So I think it's totally nice, totally fine. But if you're looking at passing on something, this one, you know, I'm sure everybody has a brush just like this in their collection. It's not really necessary. It's great to have to complete the set though. But the Byredo brushes in general, I am very impressed. I thought they would be very similar to my other synthetic brushes, and you know, they'd be nice, okay, you know, nothing special, but I'm actually really impressed. I think whether you have a lot of synthetic eye brushes or you're looking to start in them, or you're just looking for something better for Byredo shadows instead of using your fingers or other brushes, I really think that these are a great product because they're different from, you know, the shapes are a little different from what you see in a typical eyeshadow brush from synthetic or natural hairlines, right? You don't see these like smudger styles quite as often. And with these particular synthetic bristles that they've created, there's a lot of kickback to reduce the amount of movement, which really allows you to apply your pigment in, you know, one spot a little bit more easily, and you're picking up more product. It's going to give you a denser application. So if you're using this with shadows from, let's say, like Dior or Chanel or something other than Byredo, just beware that it is going to be a more intense application than it would be with a regular brush. But again, I think these are fantastic and completely ideal for the Byredo eyeshadow formula, which I absolutely love. These are definitely going to be my go-to anytime I reach for Byredo eyeshadows. And I like all three of them, but these two are my favorite, the 1 and the 3. So the other one, which is, I believe, brush 2, this one here, I think this is a nice brush, but this one doesn't lend itself to anything special for me. I can kind of get the same thing done with other brushes I have. I think it performs really well, so I would definitely, I'm glad I purchased it. We'll definitely use it with these. But if you're looking for the standouts, I actually think it's these two smudger styles. And the cheek brush, I didn't really think I'd like that one at first, especially even the first time I used it, seeing the density and so forth, but I actually think it works really well. It's a very versatile shape. If you're looking for a synthetic cheek brush, I think it's a good option. Now, for me, for blushes, I will gravitate still towards the natural hair brushes for my face products, but I do really like this one, and I have used it with cream products as well, and it works really well with that. So I think using it for a cream cheek product to kind of blend that out nicely, it's a great way to use that brush as well. So I'm very happy that I purchased that. And if I were to limit it to 3 brushes from the Byredo collection out of these, I would get these two and the cheek brush, which is number 31. So 1, 3, and 31 are my favorites, with number 1 being my number 1 favorite. So I hope this was helpful, and I'd love to know if you've picked up any of these, what your thoughts are on these brushes. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you very soon. Have a great day and stay safe and healthy.